Welcome back to Digital Self-Actualization.
The podcast where we ask how we can reach our full potential using modern technologies.
I'm Maiden Helfont,
And I'm John Maverick.
and we're both past video game addicts turned content creators and lifelong learners. Welcome back to Digital Self-Actualization. Today we're going to be talking about the pathless path. Now, what is the pathless path? Why is it relevant to digital self-actualization? Pathless path, that's what it is. It's a beep noise. The
What is
pathless
that? I don't even know what that
path.
is. Wait, there's nothing in my peripheral vision that could indicate the need for a beep. Okay.
Maybe it's warning of impending insightful conversation.
True. Okay.
Yeah. So the pathless path, as I see it, is the general belief slash mindset in life that you don't know where you are going and you are reflective and even counterculture in the ways that you see a lot of the traditional career advice. So I think it's easier to define that more clearly by saying what the default path would be. The default path for most people would be go to school, get good grades so you can get to a good college, do well in that college, get your major, get a good job, have a family, retire, only have 2 weeks of vacation a year, work a nine to
Hmm.
five. That's basically the default path. Nothing inherently wrong with that. The pathless path would not look like that. The pathless path is a rejection of the normal default path for something, well, wait for it, John, pathless.
How does that work though?
So
How can a path be a path if it's pathless?
I think we've entered a paradox here.
Hmm.
So, how does this relate to digital self actualization? I think a core component of digital self actualization is the ability to critically think and the ability to navigate your own path to digital self actualization. And I think by that definition, if you are ever acting out of something purely from socialization and not from conscious choice, you're not acting in the spirit of digital self actualization. That does not mean that if you are doing a 9 to 5, you are a corporate drone that is acting only out of socialization. What it means is that if you are doing the 9 to 5, not because of real conscious forethought and thinking about what is important to you in that area of life and why you are there, but rather because it is simply the default path. So why not? Then you're not acting in the aims of digital self actualization.
Then you're a corporate drone.
Then you're a corporate drone and you should buzz as you go about your day. I should
Zzz.
say corporate. I should have said corporate B. Kind of makes more sense.
That's
Anyways,
okay. We can edit in
yeah.
post. Use some AI tool.
Nah, yeah. Isn't that great? You can always be
Yeah,
more
power of
humorous on
digital
a podcast.
self-actualization. Put words into your mouth that you didn't have otherwise. But
So please tell me what you think of that definition.
I like how you brought in the critical part because for me, my first instinct was just like, hey, self-actualization. Everyone has a different self that they want to aspire towards, and therefore the traditional paths that society sets on us might not be as fitted to our true potential. So there is a need for self-actualization to come up with your own path, like what you said. And yeah, I guess fundamentally that requires a lot of critical thinking because you don't want to uh, immerse yourself in groupthink where you just follow the herd. You don't want to just like listen to what some two influencers, one digital, have to say about digital self actualization or anything. You want to be able to cultivate your own kind of journey towards this ideal version of yourself.
Actually, I think anything we say specifically on this podcast should be taken as the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
But
True.
anywhere else, right? It's just this channel. Yeah.
Yep.
So with that being said, I think a natural way to lead it to is what is the stories of our own transition from the default to the pathless path? I would love for you to go ahead.
Hmm. Yeah. So mine, when I think of pathless path, I mean, when I think of the default path, I think a major characteristic is just specialty as well. Because in the traditional path and how most people live their lives and live their careers, people usually go to school to focus on one specific degree and then they go work in a job related to that degree, hopefully, for the rest of their life. They don't really do much changes or anything like that. So back in elementary, before even education was even part of, I guess, my path, I think one major theme that stood out for me was just like games. I think it was just a common theme around my friend group. And as a result, I just found myself really immersed in competitive games, in playing games with friends. And I include this in my default path because of that specialist nature. Like I didn't really find myself exploring other avenues because games took up majority of my time is what I was interested in just pursuing. Lots of there wasn't much uncertainty because like I know how to play a game. I'm used to like first person shooters. Like it's pretty consistent. You have to know how to aim, you have to know how to move, coordinate with teammates. But I didn't really want to adventure into other types of games or mediums as much as I enjoy just like playing those games. And then eventually kind of that essence of being a specialist and being a high performer in that demographic then led me to my interest in computer science because although like I'm not shooting people in computer science, I
Oh
still
my god.
I hope I'm not. It's still very like
Yeah,
technological and is still
it's
like
good to
associated
know.
with the technological things I was passionate about just from games and just my upbringing. So in
Mm.
high school, I took some computer science courses, and initially I didn't really know what I wanted to do until around senior year, where it wasn't like some super compelling vision or like aspiration to become a developer, but it was the most plausible thing out of everything that I came across during high school. And I would say that even itself is part of the default path where it's like you don't really have a very compelling purpose that you want to aspire towards. You just want to choose maybe the best choice because of the influences of like what society may expect and also just because like you kind of have to you're forced to progress in the default path. You can't it's not recommended to take gap years or anything or to take more time soul searching.
Mm.
So yeah, just computer science, did that for university. I did well in school, got good grades, 4.07 GPA, let's go. And then that was until I got my first internship and which was also still pretty fun, but at the same time I started doing YouTube. I was doing YouTube as well on top of that and along the way, I guess is where my default path started to become a bit blurry as the pathless path was starting to emerge, but I won't get into that too much because that's for another part. But yeah, in essence, just computer science. I did I did actually really want to get a traditional software job at like a FANG company. When I first started being interested in software development, that was one of my major goals and aspirations, just to get into FANG, like Google, one of the big tech, just so I can make a good salary, and just because it was like prestige, which then probably connects back to my competitive gaming days where it's like I want to hit the highest rank. But yeah,
Mm.
pretty much it.
Mm. I'm interested in hearing in that story. How do you feel your experience slash emotions were different between the two phases? Because I think that's a core part of what defines the default versus the pathless path.
Would I switch from the default to the pathless or
Yeah, I'm also just like in the middle of both. How it
mhm.
feels different.
Um I feel like let me just tap into my previous self from years ago. One sec. Beep boop boop boop.
Meditation.
Mhm. I would say that I wasn't inherently dissatisfied when I was pursuing my software development journey just to get into a prestigious company, but and I think it's fair because I didn't really know better. That was already a huge, like, goal at the time, and I guess I wasn't as aware of the potential opportunities you could have outside the default path to recognize that there could be more things that are more fulfilling that are out there for me to work towards and that I could explore more.
Mm.
And I guess my first taste of that was through YouTube, which is why my pathless path now has a lot to do with, like, YouTube and just entrepreneurship as a whole.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. Thanks for sharing your story. It resonated a lot with me as I was listening because I feel like we have similar entry points into the pathless path in that I also used to be heavily addicted to video games. However, it was less shooting people up and more being on my own in isolation, creating
Mm.
machinations and plans for how to take over the world in Total Warhammer 2 or Civilization 6. And then during quarantine, I began getting into the anabolic diet because I wanted to become fitter. And I started following this really rigid dieting routine where I would eat basically just salads and so much chicken. I'm surprised I didn't start clucking myself. It was terrible. And then one day, my mom at dinner was like, Aiden, you've learned a lot from doing this diet and watching all this fitness content. What if you made your own YouTube channel? I was like, huh, interesting idea. So the next morning, I borrowed my dad's camera. And by that, I mean I stole it
Mhm.
and recorded my first YouTube video, The Day in the Life of Aiden Helfont, which was still is the worst video I've ever made. But, what are you going to do?
Highest performing.
Highest performing,
Most
when
dislike.
it
Highest
when
performing,
it
most
was
dislikes.
it probably does have the most dislike. Anyways, that kickstarted me on this YouTube journey, and I think doing YouTube and joining the part-time YouTuber Academy to try and improve at YouTube while experiencing my first semester at college is what really began to solidify in me that I was on the pathless path because I knew nobody else at Cornell who was doing this sort of thing. Everyone else in my university life was just university. That was it. And then here I was in the morning doing YouTube editing and script writing, in the afternoons going to classes, and then at night taking more classes for the part-time YouTuber Academy. It was crazy, and it was so weird feeling because it felt like I was in two different worlds at once, one university
Mhm.
and one being online. And I became intoxicated by it. And also the reading the 4-hour work week and getting this notion in my head that on the pathless path, you can create whatever life you want that works with you, the autonomy that you want, the degree of competence that you don't get in some other places. You can get so much intrinsic motivation in this way, and you can also make passive income in a way that allows you to not just trade your time for money. Now, as we'll get on to later when we talk about the downsides, because it wouldn't be digital self actualization if you didn't look at both sides, I will say how I think that's a very insidious idea as well, while also being an important one. But it's worth mentioning before we go forward that the pathless path is not some golden path to getting a goose that can crap golden eggs for you.
That
It is another option. And for us, I think has been a more fulfilling option, but is not right for everyone.
mhm. Pathless path is also fucked in its own ways.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't get what you said, near the end, it cut out, but yeah,
Near the end, I was talking
yeah.
about um like how the pathless path is not the only good path that we
Mhm.
should all join. We have to
Okay,
look at both sides. Yeah. So I'm
yeah.
curious, what 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 more about the pathless path have we not explored? I feel like there's some aspects to it that we haven't defined, like for example, the vacations, um, how it treats time differently, like how what advantages it gives you that you don't see in the default path as much. We've talked a little bit about autonomy and other stuff, but what about the pathless path in specific resonates with you on like a day-to-day level?
Mhm. Before Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was about to say before we go into like the specifics, I feel like we should start with why someone would want to go on the
Oh, yeah,
pathless
yeah, yeah,
path.
yeah, yeah, good
But
idea.
I think you did lead into that at the end because like what compel you said you asked what compels you about the pathless path on like a
Yeah,
daily basis, and I feel like that answer also answers why people may be compelled towards a
it's a
pathless
great,
path.
great point.
Mm-hmm. As like maybe even leading off that, it's like instead of the traditional path where the emphasis is doing what you should be doing, which usually is goal oriented and cause you to sacrifice the present moment. I feel like the pathless path is a constant journey, similar to self actualization, on just continuing to find what is most fulfilling for you to do in your life. And I would say this even ties in with our previous podcast on intrinsic motivation because these default norms on the default path are based on our societal norms and expectations, but it's difficult for people to feel fulfilled by them if they don't necessarily resonate with those because like I personally don't want to learn all this half the stuff I have to in my computer science degree. So I just self-learned because that was the pathless path I wanted to take because I wanted to have a different um, identity and career I wanted to build with software beyond what schools were preparing you to do so. And I feel like with the default path, we may be prone to being in survival mode because we have expectations we put up for ourselves to meet what other people are doing,
Mm,
especially in competitive like schools, or if you have I don't know, relatives who always ask you like, "Hey, why aren't you more like your cousin over there? Like he's a doctor, this one's a lawyer, and you're a fucking VTuber. Like, what are you doing?" But um in the pathless path, you don't really listen to those metrics as much or sources and instead just tune in more to yourself. So it's
mm,
more of a fulfilling and maybe even spiritual journey that
yeah.
invites curiosity and exploration.
Yeah, there's one thing I wanna add on to that before you go. I love what you said. I think one language clarification I would mean is that it's not that you don't listen to other people and what the world wants, it's that you filter it through your own
Mm,
self-actualization goals
yeah,
beforehand. 'Cause
you
I
don't
think
blindly
y
listen.
you don't blindly listen, yeah, because the default path is just
Blindly listen.
yeah, yeah, well, no, I don't wanna say that. I don't wanna say that because I don't think the default path is inherently bad. It's when you're on the default path and you haven't thought about anything else. You're just operating on socialization, on what the world has conditioned you to believe, what your family, your friends, your teachers have conditioned you to believe, which has wisdom. Um, but there's a tremendous amount of wisdom in trying to find your own way as well, even if it leads to the default path.
Mhm. I think I think this one quote from the book The Pathless Path by Paul Millard, which is probably where we both really got to understand the pathless path
Yeah.
was I think this quote, okay. He says that on the pathless path, the goal is not to find a job, make money, build a business, or achieve any other metric. It's to actively and consciously search for the work that you want to keep doing.
Mm,
And
mm,
I think for me, one of the resonating quotes in Transcend, I don't have it on me, but it was something similar where it's like, if you just want a life of power, status, fame, then like there's so many books out there for you. But if you want a life of deep meaning and purpose and growth, then like Transcend is for you. And I feel like there's a deep connection between those two, going beyond like
absolutely.
traditional metrics and
Yeah.
success.
Yeah. I think that's something very important to note about the pathless path is I feel like we both, as you said, got about this notion from Paul Millard's book. And I think an
Mhm,
important thing he talks about in that book is he doesn't just associate the pathless path with going against the norm. It's also the mindset with which you do it, which is that you do it in the aims of actualizing yourself and finding something that's meaningful.
mhm,
And it's actually from him, Paul Miller, that I got one of the core philosophies in my life of rippling, which I've probably
Oh.
talked about more than I can count. He talks about it in the book. But to say it one more time, to beat a dead horse, as you would,
We love
it
promoting
it
animal cruelty in the
yeah,
podcast.
exactly. So that's all. What do you think the whole notion of transcendence is? Is it's we're transcending our animal friends by showing us how much better
Hmm.
we are than them. Um, so the, rippling is the notion that every time you interact with another person, it is the opportunity to ripple out your vibes into them so that they can ripple them out as well. Those vibes could be reflectiveness, it could be a feeling of energy, it could be whatever. But the important thing is that those vibes help that person become a better, more actualized human being that aim towards that way. And you have that opportunity every time you interact with someone. And I really love that idea in the Pathless Path because he has this anecdote he gives where he basically started to just gift his time or money to people with boundaries, of course, but he would just gift it. And
He
he
didn't
would
become a
expect
slave?
nothing in return. No, he didn't become a slave. He would expect nothing in return. There's this one woman that would asked him for like $1,000 because she was in dire
Oh.
straits. And he felt after talking with her for a bit that it actually was a genuine plea for help and it was not her fault that she got into that situation. She wasn't just using it for drug money. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna just do it. So he did it, and most people would be like, "What? Why would you do that?" And he wasn't expecting anything in return. This story wouldn't really change if nothing else happened. But what did end up happening is 3 months later, the woman comes back to him and like has completely changed her life from those $1,000. She's gotten back to where she was before, even farther, and she
Wow.
like thanks him profusely and gives him the $1,000 back. And he's like, "Wow, like my god." And I think that was just a very powerful example of this notion of rippling is now she's going to go into her day and she's going to be more giving with her time and energy. um, and I think this is all a part of the pathless path. Not that you can't do that on the default path, but the pathless path, I feel like that's an inherent aspect of it. I don't see whatever Jeff Bezos is doing to get to those billions of dollars, that being a pathless path. I wouldn't define it as one, even though it's not the default path, because I would not say he has those values. They're underlying it.
Mhm. No, that's a very good point. Like, and if we want to measure, I guess, how pathless someone is going by values, then even someone who is taking a quote unquote traditional path can still find pathless path values while pursuing it, which then also kind of makes them go on the pathless path.
Mm,
It's like flip side of what you said, like Jeff Bezos on the traditional pathway doesn't seem to be inheriting pathless path values. If
yeah.
someone came with like more of a charitable mindset, more of a non-transactional mindset, which is one of the key aspects of the new pathless path mindset, then like you could argue that they're creating a pathless path in the default path in a way.
I think that's a good point. And it also reminds me that one of you can still have the pathless path values in the default path, as you were saying. Like if you just figure out a way to go against the way that your job or culture might be molding you to act in your
Mhm.
career and be more giving even in a default career, we're not going to be like label mongers and say, "Oh, you're actually on the pathless path. Stop
Yeah.
saying you're on the default." But like you're imbuing values that we would see as being present in the pathless
Hmm.
path.
In the default path, like your goal as an employee is to increase shareholder value. Maybe on the pathless path, you hate capitalism, and your goal is to actually decrease shareholder value and make the company go bankrupt.
Nice. You're an
Yeah,
accelerationist. You're like,
yeah,
I'm just going to accelerate all the problems in the company until it just explodes.
yeah. Actually, I think that would go against it because then you'd be affecting lots of people's jobs. Yeah, I also, I, I honestly don't even remember Rippling being a part of the book, so it's crazy to hear that.
It's at the
Like,
very end.
it's mentioned there was so influential for your life philosophy. It sounds
Yeah.
like to me your ideal version of self-actualization is just to give people $1,000 at this point.
And that's why the first person that gives, their family Obsidian University will be getting a free $1,000.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's a
Don't hold us
weird way
accountable.
to say
That is
yeah,
a
don't
joke.
hold us accountable. It's a joke. Yeah.
Unless Aiden's willing to pay for it.
I no, I'm good, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think going back to what we said about why are we doing the pathless path, I think that's a big one. I think another thing is connecting to our previous podcast on intrinsic motivation and meta learning. On the pathless path, I see so much more autonomy and
Mhm.
and intrinsic motivation in the way that I handle work. Like, I don't know what it is about me and my psychology, but I've noticed, like, for some reason, if someone tells me to do something, it doesn't even matter if it's something I would enjoy doing. It just takes away my motivation to do it for
Huh.
and not like completely, but like much more so than if I did it on my own. Like if I reflect back on the last week, I've literally spent like tens of hours working on a poem narrative video that I had no one's telling me to make it. I just feel like a tug to. It's
Hmm.
almost like it's a hunger sense. Like I need to do this to satiate myself. Otherwise I'll feel like lost. And the pathless path is very appealing to me because of that, because I just love learning. I love jumping to new things. And it's
Mhm.
harder to do that in a default path because in university in specific, which is where I think this applies most, I so often am annoyed when I have to learn something because it's on the syllabus, even though I think it's utterly useless or it's not interesting to me. Like I
Mhm.
joined this one class, and then the professors will like make you feel bad because they're like, "Well, you don't come to my class if you don't want to learn everything." And I'm like, "I'm the one paying. Like, what do you
My
mean? Like,
choice.
this is
No, it's
my
your parents who are paying. They should have the final say.
Oh, that's true, that's true. I'll ask my dad every time that I
Yeah.
that
Can I
I
skip
don't wanna go
class?
to lecture. Yeah. "Dad, would you go to this class? Would you learn about, um" I can't think of something stupid, but, like, just put X stupid psychological thing,
That
and then you'll understand.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's very appealing to me.
Mhm. I 100% agree. The autonomy is just crazy. Like one day I could just be I think it also complements my ADHD tendencies in a way where I'm interested in just a lot of things. I'm more so a generalist and a specialist, just with like YouTube, coding, creating Obsidian products, anime, just all this, just this conglomeration of things, and being able to just actively work on what speaks to me most at a certain given time, instead of having these explicit responsibilities and obligations I need to uphold in a very secure, stable job. I feel like it's just much more freeing and keeps my life much more meaningful and fulfilling.
Hmm.
I can spend my time on my hyperfixations and I can just like relax by just switching to another hyperfixation.
Bounce in between.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is there anything else you think that pulls you to it, or do you think we've gone over a lot? Oh, this
Mm.
is a big one actually. I can't believe we haven't mentioned this. So, turns out in America specifically that most normal jobs give you 2 weeks of vacation time, which, if you ask me, should be qualified as slavery.
Mm.
I'm joking, but it's
You wanna
like
go back to the 12-hour workday?
I'm good actually. Yeah, no, that's an upgrade, but like that's so little vacation time. In Europe, they understand how to chill, but it's just ridiculous. Like, and on a pathless path where you can create your work more, you're in the way that it's bound. You can even remote work if you want,
Mhm.
and get these insane relationships with work that I've heard from like some of my friends like Kelly who can, because he remote work for like 3 months in Switzerland where his wife lives instead of working just in America, and he can go on like road trips and just work on his laptop instead of
Mhm.
working in the physical premises. So it's just really cool. Uh, and I think that's how people are naturally supposed to be. I think there's this thing I heard about leisure in ancient Greece meaning like not business or something like that. And that
Not
work,
business or not busyness?
not business or something like that. It's something that leisure used to have be this notion of like what you were doing most of the time, and then work was just the thing that you did to be able to do more leisure. Whereas now it
Mm,
feels like the opposite, where a lot of the time leisure is what you do so you can do more work. I know that's a trap you can get into in productivity thinking. Is like, oh, I'll relax more and I'll relax this much because that's how much I need to relax in order to be able to do more work.
mhm.
Which is a pretty scuffed way of like thinking about things. If you think about it, is like I'm relaxing only so that I can work more.
True workaholic mindset, true hustle culture, we take those.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think adding on to that, um, that also reminds me of just the general notion of work we have now, because for a lot of people, work is just a means to an end. Like, this is also a flip side of what you said. And for people who maybe aren't into like the self-improvement productivity rabbit hole, work is just a means to end so they could fund like their leisures, but then their leisures might be more hedonistic or more like shallow, may not be fully true to what they want to do because they want to escape from the negative feelings that work gives them. So they'll
Yeah.
party, they'll drink. Obviously, you could do both of those just for fun. You could probably even self-actualize by doing both, but like, you're stuck in this vicious cycle where you're forced to work at a job you don't like just so you can make enough to escape from it, and like mini vacations on the weekend, and then you just keep repeating it. But I think in the pathless path, I find a much more fulfilling definition of work because it's also heavily influenced by service and what your contribution to the world is.
Mhm.
Because there, you're not just fully thinking about yourself, but you're also thinking about just like the grander scheme of things, which helps you
Yeah.
feel more connected with the world, helps you find more meaning in what you do. And yeah, just helps it take the benefits you get from work beyond just that survival perspective.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think that is what also compels me there. Because if I don't know, some people just like take software jobs just to get a fat paycheck since they're one of the higher paying jobs if you don't want to be a doctor.
yeah.
But, like, to me, I think the ability to just exercise your creativity to solve problems in the world through technology, especially with some of the more modern technologies that are coming out, like crypto, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
AI, I think there's, like, real potential to greatly impact people's lives there. And yeah, so that's what compels me to software. And unfortunately, school doesn't always facilitate kind of that relationship with
Mm.
the field.
Yeah. I resonate with everything you said. And I think that's a natural segue into we've talked about the benefits, but what are the admitting downsides that the pathless path might have?
Mhm.
I think one that I want to point out is that the pathless path is not for everyone. And in some ways, it is also a privileged thing to be able to go on it because some people have exorbitant amount of social pressure to be on the default path from family members,
Mhm.
to the point where like I personally know some who if they didn't do what their parents wanted, they would just lose their university funding.
Wow.
So, yeah, much harder to do it in that case. Also, the pathless path inherently focuses less on finances in a lot of cases, meaning if you're in a situation where that is crucial, it can be very hard to keep doing the pathless path route. Uh, in order to succeed financially on the pathless path, it does require you to learn some skills that aren't as common or as easy to learn because you want to differentiate yourself. And that might be harder
Mhm.
if you live in an environment where everyone else is doing the default thing, right? And I think for me, it's much easier to stay on the path because I'm not in a financially dire situation. My parents are very loving and understanding. They're supportive of the
Oh.
pathless path, even. So yeah, definitely not for everyone. I think you can still, in a harder circumstance, try and go on the pathless path and do stuff that might be what is considered the default path, but you're doing it with the eventual goal of entering the pathless path. So you can kind of like meta be on it in that way.
Hmm. You could like train yourself to adopt the values while in the default. So then when the pathless path is available, you've
Mhm.
already become someone who is prepared to take full advantage of the opportunity.
Exactly. Exactly. You don't have to jump into the pathless path too. You can kind of take like a little step, right?
Hmm.
Like you don't have to quit your job. you can you can be like, okay, I'll try this little side gig on where I create YouTube videos about philosophy and why cats are the greatest animal that has ever existed.
Hmm. I
Maybe
think
that's what you want to do.
I think that is a very common path, very common
That's true, actually.
perspective that
And
people have.
why hmm
Why
why
AI cats are cuter than real cats.
yeah, there
There
you
we
go.
go.
There you go.
That's a controversial thing.
yeah. So that's one thing I can think of. What else do you think?
Um. Wait.
For the like
So
the downsides of the pathless path.
yeah, yeah. I think it not being affordable for everyone in terms of like financial or just like genuine opportunity costs is a huge downside. I think the biggest one that I've personally witnessed or experienced in my own life pursuing this path has been the uncertainty.
Mm,
Because when you take this pathless path, you have complete autonomy over what you do with your life. And you mentioned it to be a good thing because you get to exercise your autonomy and do things that are deeply intrinsically motivating for you, which then help you find fulfillment and just like consistency. But at the same time, you are still responsible for that. I feel like in my case, I can feel overwhelmed with all the things that I could be doing that I feel compelled to do because I could be doing my YouTube, I could be working on maybe new products, I could be continuing to work on this new app I'm working on, I could join a startup. Just with all these different potential paths I could be taking while on this pathless path or different directions, I would say it it can be sometimes hard to narrow down on a specific one, which I feel like you kind of have to do at times, or else you're just gonna like feel spread out and maybe even lead to burnout.
yeah. Yeah, I think uncertainty is probably the hardest thing for me on the path as well is there is this paradox of choice. You have so many options about what to do that it can be overwhelming, terrifying even, especially when you're thinking about career options after college. It's much easier to be on the pathless path while in university because you have this default path that you're still doing and then you do the pathless path as a side thing. But when you're completely out in the world like you are, it I can't even imagine yet.
Hmm.
I mean, I can begin to imagine because I'm in the career search process, but like you can literally do anything. And that isn't for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything you wanted to add onto that idea?
Hmm. I don't think the uncertainty point, but I do think another thing that's very difficult is the lack of understanding from people on the default path
Mhm.
about what the hell you're doing. Because the default path wouldn't be default if it wasn't socialized into people.
Mhm.
And when people break away from the socialization, a lot of people can be very confused, if not downright angry,
Mm.
because they sometimes can see you doing the pathless path as like questioning what they're doing, even if they don't admit it. Is some people, and I'm not, most people don't do this, but some people deep down inside aren't fulfilled by their default path. And then seeing you do this and taking the leap can make them angry.
Mhm.
I've definitely experienced that, but I think what's
Everyone's
more
jealous of you.
common, no, I think what's more common is people just being confused. They're like, why
Mhm.
would you? What? why? They're like, like
Genuine concern
sometimes,
on your face.
yeah, actually, what's been really funny is sometimes I'll tell people about like a video that I've worked on for like hundreds of hours, and they're just like, "What? Was this for school?" And I'm like, "No." They're like, "Then what? Why?" And like, couldn't you have used that elsewhere or something like that? Like,
What's
really
your response when
softening
that
up your
happens?
resume. My response, it's usually a feeling of bafflement, and then I try and explain like how intrinsically motivating the thing is, and also how much you learn as a result of doing these
Mhm,
yourself and finding your own way. In fact, I would argue this is a whole other topic, but I would argue you often learn more than you do in school just following the directions.
mhm.
So,
And how did they
the
take that?
well, I don't say it in that mean of a way, but
Oh.
like, no, it also really depends on the person, how
Mhm.
you
That's
describe
fair.
it. But yeah, I think the uncertainty, a lot of people can be very confused, especially people that are looking out for your financial future. They'll often ask, like, so how are things going? Like, is everything okay down there? I think another thing is you'll be like you'll feel isolated sometimes. And I think especially on the pathless path, it's easier to find people online who are also on it.
Mhm,
Physically is a whole nother matter. Because physically it can be very, very difficult to find people
mhm,
also on the path. So I will say my physical relationships, they tend not to be as resonating with my pathless path side as compared to online, which can feel like a whole because physical relationships have this all other side to them that it's hard to get in an online relationship. Online relationships also have things that physical relationships don't, but they're just different. And it would be
mhm,
nice to be able to have both on both of the paths.
mhm. Yeah, it feels like I really resonate with what you said there. It feels like there's a discrepancy in just like the social environments you find yourself in. Online, much more prone to other people who are on a pathless path, but then physical, I remember just countless times where I would feel lonely or isolated from the people around me because they didn't share similar values. They didn't share similar ambitions or
Mm,
purpose in their life, which then can easily make you question your own, which then leads to the uncertainty again. It's like, am I on the right path? People's questions for concern, it can also bleed into your own, even though you like have a strong internal resolve to do it, just because of just like the influence of just your environment.
mm, yeah, yeah, I agree. And I'm curious how you navigate this yourself. Because, like, with all these downsides, like, are there any things that you think have helped you in particular navigate them?
Like everything, all these downsides.
No, probably the ones that were like most resonant with you, like the uncertainty one, as you said.
Hmm. Huh. I think one thing that helps me is just approaching this uncertainty with acceptance. And I feel like this acceptance is manifested through curiosity and wonder because the fundamental nature of curiosity and wonder causes you to seek new things. And uncertainty usually is caused by new situations or new experiences that you're not familiar with. So instead of feeling kind of like overwhelmed or maybe even afraid of what the future may hold or what may be in front of you, I feel like just accepting all these new things for what they are and seeing how they can serve you or can be part of your pathless path have been helpful for me. And
Mm,
I think for my case, one of these uncertain things could just be maybe the potential financial possibilities of the pathless path. Because, like, even in the pathless path, there could be a default pathless path I take on becoming a YouTuber or online person with like decent subscribers and income. But like that isn't what I'm on the pathless path for. So instead, I want to like look for a way to express myself online that affords more fulfillment. But then like since it is me expressing myself, which no one else has done, because no one is me and expresses themselves, I
No
don't
one's you,
know.
John?
I I don't know how well that would fare in terms of like the logistics and like financial feasibility of it. But I think if I approach this from a mindset of curiosity and wonder, I could look at it from a growth mindset as well. And it wouldn't necessarily be failure if I don't reach similar or requirements to be able to continue doing this in the long term. But it would help me kind of learn so I could better adjust my own pathless path to something that can maybe afford for more survivability.
Mm, yeah. I think it's important for everyone to go through that thinking process that you just went in their own like navigations of the downsides. Because I think every person has different aspects about it that different aspects about the pathless path that can come up at different times as being the most difficult part. Like I think for me right now, the biggest downside is the uncertainty, but that hasn't been the biggest downside in the past.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, the uncertainty was like a positive a year ago when
Really?
I still when I still had like that knowledge. You know, you'll be in Cornell for another 2 years,
Mm.
so you don't have to
You had
worry
something to fall
so
back
much.
on.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
As for
Uh,
the other downsides, like lack of social understanding, I think with the lack of social understanding, that one's gotten easier over time. Is like your my self-worth has gone up, and your feeling of self-efficacy, and the realization that you are like learning so much by doing this. It's
mhm,
really when you first begin that it can be very difficult to survive those lashing because you don't feel the meaning and fulfillment that the pathless path gives yet.
mhm. You haven't fully surrendered to the intrinsic motivation and fulfillment of the
Yeah,
pathless path because 'cause you're still
exactly.
basing the pathless path on default path values.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm,
I think a good way to veer towards an ending, unless you wanted to say more about that, is like where we are in our pathless path now.
hmm. Yeah, that that could work. Um, did you have something in mind already? I might need some
Yeah.
my unconscious might need some time to
I
think of
think for
a
me, the
answer.
biggest thing that I'm struggling with now is the uncertainty. I'm thinking about what to do after college. There's so many different ideas. Everyone has a different idea about what is the right thing to do. Some people are like, you should do all remote working because you've been enjoying so much autonomy. And
Mm,
other people are like, no, you need to work physically right away after college so that you can get that connection. Some people are like, you should go to a big city because the big cities are where it's at. And then some people are like, actually, the medium and small cities, because that's where the nature is. And you won't feel as claustrophobic. Uh,
huh.
and it's very overwhelming because on a default path, it can be easier to think about some of these questions because a lot of people I've heard just go where the job is. Like there's no other question. It's just
I got
and
a job, guess I'm going
a
there.
very funny example. I hope my dad's fine with this, but he when he finished with his Russian literature degree, searched up like, okay, where are the jobs in U.S. for this?
Where the
There
job's at.
was one in the entire U.S.
Wow.
So he didn't have a very difficult question about where where to go after college
Mhm.
because that was it. Um, so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I'm struggling with.
And then how have you been navigating that? Because it sounds like everyone's genuinely trying to pull you in like opposite directions. It's like you're on that medieval like torture device where they strap your limbs into different shackles and they slowly pull you apart.
I haven't. I yesterday I did coke, quack, and quaaludes all at the same time. So yeah, it hasn't been a very good ride. No, it's been interesting navigating it. I think I have had more times in my life than ever where like it's hard to fall asleep sometimes because your
Wow.
subconscious will just be like, "Eh," like all this noise. Uh, and consciously, it's funny because then I always have the same conversation. I'm like, subconscious, what if I told you that getting more sleep is actually going to help you handle whatever anxieties you have better?
Whoa.
And then subconscious is like, that makes so much sense. I'm not going to do it. And you're just like, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I do feel like it has been quite uncertain, but I think talking to a lot of perspectives, even though I've been highlighting how confusing that can make it, has also made me think more critically about what I'm doing. Um, Having good understanding of my self and how to relax in a way that is relaxing instead of relaxing in a way where it's like you should relax just so you can do more work. Um, and then also just like reading a lot of self therapy books, like we've been doing in After Socrates, the lecture series
Mhm.
we're going through together, and learning about parts work, internal family systems, and focusing and getting more into different forms of meditation has been really helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like you've just been taking care of your headspace to be able to manage these different thoughts and uncertainties of the future of your work. You're not necessarily, from what I hear, like have made any clear decision, but just yeah, continue to just like explore and prepare.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
about for you?
I think for me, I do have some clarity because I know for now my goal is to like somewhat my goal is to hopefully develop this app and then start sharing it and start using it. But after that, like that's going to be a whole nother uncertain dimension because like the success on the app will greatly determine what can be done with it. And even on top of the potential paths I could go down if the app does well, there's also a part of me that does question how much I want to contribute to the field of just obsidian, cognitive science, personal knowledge management, because
Mm,
these ideas and like the basis of my brand the past 3 years still are a really fun thing for me to explore. And I feel like there's still a lot that could be done, especially in relation to making it more accessible for the online demographic, like with this VTuber and just with like anime incorporated into it. So I think for me, my biggest dilemma just has been to find ways to find balance between it all. And recently, my solution has just been to continue falling back on periodic reviews just to find more healthy, manageable workloads and deadlines for me to work towards, just so I don't like try to do everything all at once or too much all at once. And also just to allow for time across all these different areas. Because if I don't spend time working on one of these areas, it'll continue to linger in the back of my mind. Be like, what if?
mm,
What if I did this? What if I genuinely take action and I get to experience it for myself and I get to compare it with all the other things I'm working on? I can better understand, like, hey, is this the right path for me? Do I really need to continue thinking about this? Is this something I want to incorporate more of? Or should I like take a back seat from uploading videos or something along those lines?
mm,
So yeah, that has been kind of what my headspace has been at as of recently.
yeah. I love that you're thinking about using like that wheel of life and periodic reviews as a way of
Mhm.
like grounding yourself during
Staples.
that period. Yeah, staples. mm. Is there anything else you think we should explore before wrapping up?
Huh. Maybe if someone were interested in getting a taste of the pathless path, what could they do?
I think quit your job and get
Read the book
I
for
think
sure.
yeah, read the book by Paul Millard and then just explore something, literally anything that you are not socialized to do that is not relaxation. It has to be like some create I think a creative thing is particularly good
Mm.
idea here.
And then why is
'Cause
that?
I don't know, for some reason when I think pathless path okay, I think that's a little biased because 'cause I'm
You think
such
I'm
a
becoming a
creative
starving
dude.
artist?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm a little biased because that's mostly what my pathless path is. I think just
Mhm.
something that isn't socialized for you to do. So, like, let's say you're at, uh, working a job in, like, advertising, I don't know, or you're, like, a sales exec.
What the f
The exact demographic that would be watching digital
Yeah.
self-actualization. Um, and then let's say, like, you decide you want secretly to become a concert pianist. I don't know. And then you start doing a self-learning project for that on the side, or you start freelancing on like Upwork, doing work out of all these random skills that you've built for fun on the side, and now you're actually making money off of them. It doesn't have to be for money; it could also just be for fun. But yeah, I think that would be a good starting point and see how that feels.
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah, I think just adding off of that, something that helps you be more in tune with yourself, your inner thoughts, your inner desires beyond like what you said, what society may ask you of could be quite
Mm,
helpful because you can't create your own pathless path if you have no capacity for creating your own direction.
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
training the mindsets as you do that of the pathless path, like doing something to ripple to someone else.
It all goes full
Yeah,
circle.
exactly. It all goes full circle. Well, that's a wrap. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
That's a
Take your first
burrito.
step, and that's a burrito. And bye bye.